Hi, everyone. Welcome to Menopause Supports with Marks and Spencer. Sinead McNamara is my name. I'm founder of the National Menopause Summit in Cork. And as I was saying last time when I was speaking to Shalini Wiseman, is there a man, woman or child on the planet at this point that doesn't know that the National Menopause Summit Cork is taking place in less than 3 weeks' time, Friday, the 20th of October at City Hall in Cork. Of course, it's really exciting to be on here today, particularly in light of the fact that we're celebrating World Menopause Awareness Month. And of course, we'll have World Menopause Day on the 18th of November, which will be 2 days before the summit in Cork. So all good and lots of stuff to feel good and positive about. I'm absolutely delighted this afternoon to be speaking to Sarah Alcock. Sarah is one of our panelists in Cork and also worked with us in Dublin. She's a font of knowledge. Sarah is the founder and creator of Prime Fit by Sarah, which was a business that was inspired by Sarah's own experience going through perimenopause, which led her and inspired her to go on and establish incredible knowledge in terms of nutrition, strength, training, wellness for women in midlife. So she works with the girls who are all in and around our own parish, as the fella says. So delighted to have the opportunity to chat with her this afternoon. Sarah, thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
You're so welcome. I'm delighted to be here talking about my favorite topic.
Well, do you know what we were saying before we press the record button, guys? It's actually one of my favorite topics too, because I do train myself. So I love chatting with Sarah about training, and we could talk about training all night, but we're going to talk about the benefits of training for the next 20 to 25 minutes. So I suppose we might as well dive into it, as the fella says. Yeah, brilliant. So Sarah, let's start at the scary level here, okay? I think we all know that there are people watching this who possibly don't do much training or maybe don't do much exercise. And this is a no judgment zone, guys.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Many years ago, I was a total couch potato myself. And I mean that sincerely. Well, I certainly went through phases of years off the couch. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
With the odd, few months here and there of training and all the rest. What no one wants to hear, Sarah, and I think you'll agree with me here, is you need to move from being a couch potato into a gym like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You better start running 10K a day and get with the program overnight. I think people go, oh, gee, or they perceive that's what they're being told. So what would your advice as a professional be for someone who is doing minimal to very little at the moment?
Okay. My first thing is walking is an amazing tool. So if you can do that, or if you're not doing that, by starting with that alone, you've already upped your movement. That's a win in itself.
Yeah.
From there, in terms of trying to motivate yourself to do something about it, that's the first step. So I'm always really proud of someone when they walk in the door to me, because I know how hard it is to, first of all, make the call, because then you're going, oh my God, I'm kind of half committing to something here.
Indeed.
And then when you turn up, I would say 90% of the women that come into me are not gym people by any means. And it was my whole motivation for getting into this was, well, how do we get women in midlife moving more at a time when they're moving less? And they also need it more than ever, because we know we're losing muscle mass, bone density, all those kind of things in our perimenopausal phase. And then it gets worse as we get into menopause. So unless we're doing something about it, we're going to be in potentially a bit of trouble. So trying to focus on the really important whys and the non-aesthetic whys is key. If you are purely focused on dropping a dress size, or coming into me and going, I just want to lose a little bit here, or
or can we get rid of the bingo wings? How long will that take?
Or pointing at the belly. I'm used to all that kind of stuff, and it's fine if you do that, but try, if you can at all, convince yourself to switch your mindset from all the stuff that you've unfortunately been conditioned to think over the years. And one of the ones that we were speaking about is being smaller is being better. When actually, no. And if you take, for example, as being on the scale, if that's your marker, ideally throw it out the window, because if you're losing weight potentially in your 40s and 50s, it could be muscle that you're dropping and not body fat. So we do have to unlearn a lot of things. So ideally think about, I always say to women, where do you want to be in 10 years' time? First of all, that's your first goal. So if you're starting to feel aches and pains now that you wouldn't have felt before, then use that as your motivation, which, to be fair, is usually when people contact me now, women contact me now, that is the first thing they'll say. They'll say, look, I just want to feel stronger. I feel like I'm weaker than I've ever been before, and I don't like the feeling. And I'm starting to feel less energetic and a bit achy. Okay, so then if you start to train a little bit lighter weights first with your muscles, so you can build it up over time and get your tendons and ligaments used to it as well. If you fire into something that your potentially your muscles might be able for, but your tendons and ligaments are not used to doing at a repetition of whatever it is. So I would say maybe think really hard about where you want to be in 10 years' time and beyond. I mean, ideally, you're starting with that phase. So if you're in your 40s, where do I want to be when I'm in my 50s? But ideally, have a really long-term goal as well, because it is ultimately about health and independence as you age and trying to age powerfully. It's not inevitable that we should all be completely in decline as we age.
Absolutely.
And those that have continued it are proof of that. And even if you take, like, not even mentioning athletes or anybody that has a history of training for a long period of time, if I see farmers, female farmers come into me, or women that have grown up on a farm years ago, or farmers' wives, for example, that are always involved in some form of lifting and carrying, because that's the nature, they're incredibly strong usually. You know, they have a really good base of muscle mass. So that's how to think of it, really. That's the first step.
Absolutely. And I think what's wonderful in everything that's sort of come out over, and it's hard to believe that it's only like since 2022 that we're openly discussing menopause. I mean, we've come so far in such a short period of time. But I think, Sarah, that there were sort of accepted norms that were just balderdash about midlife, i.e. you're going to get fat, lie under it. You're going to get weak, lie under it. You're going to start eventually sort of, walking, with a bit of a curve in your back, because that's what happens. There is absolutely no need to go down that road or fall into that trap. Isn't that correct?
No, and that's another mindset thing, really. I mean, again, like you said, we've kind of been semi-conditioned to think that that's how women's health goes, and I really feel for the older generation, I really do, that have never had access to this information, had no idea that if they had osteopenia, well, first of all, they probably wouldn't have known if they had osteopenia or osteoarthritis for a long time, but that you still actually can actively help that. And that's what makes me really sad. So the fact that we have this information now, and like that, we might only be talking about it for the last couple of years, but we have a few small pieces of research from around 2016, 2012, relating especially to the likes of osteopenia and osteoporosis, that massively support now making big strides in resistance training being really, really beneficial for it. So if you are still clinging on to that thing of, accept that, I'm going to feel worse. Don't. And that's what I was saying to you when I felt like absolute rubbish a couple of years ago when I started on my hormonal roller coaster. I did not enjoy being in the gym at all, even though it was my job. I hated how I looked and how I felt. I hated it. However, I clung on to the fact that stubborn as I am, I'm not just going to slip into myself now and disappear. I have to try and find ways to support myself. So it really was born out of my own personal experience of, I know how hard it can be. I do genuinely know.
And it's fantastic to work with someone. I mean, I know everybody isn't going to have the opportunity potentially.
No, but there are other people out there, which is great. There are more and more women now starting to work with our niche, which is amazing.
Exactly. And just as a little anecdotal aside, I work with a trainer who is also like a friend of mine now, because we've worked together on and off over the years. And I'm, dare I say it, educating him on menopause and perimenopause and encouraging him. And he's very open to it. He's in his late 40s. He's in great nick. He's always trained. He's a professional trainer. But the word is out there, I suppose, across the industry in terms of working with women. So it's so women in midlife. It's so important to get good advice. Sarah, let's just for the crack talk about, you were mentioning about being in the gym and feeling dreadful during perimenopause. So in my opinion, Instagram has destroyed the gym for people who didn't like gyms anyway. And now they're going, oh, Jesus Christ, I'm going to be surrounded by supermodels posing in, top of the range designer gear, and they're all 25 and I am not, and I hate all of that. So if we're working with a client, how does that work in a gym environment, Sarah?
So it doesn't necessarily have to be in a gym environment, first of all.
Great. Okay.
Absolutely not. However, I would say if you have no experience whatsoever in ever picking up a weight, then you absolutely should get somebody who is trained, qualified, and good at what they do. And how you choose that person is, I find that not enough people actually question, not necessarily the qualifications of people, but when it comes to, like, if I'm in my mid 40s or 40s, or like I'm trained with pregnant and postnatal women as well. I mean, you want to go to someone who really knows what they're talking about. Not necessarily, they don't have to have gone through it, but they need to have empathy for somebody who's telling them, I have a lot of joint pain and, I'm worried that this is going to make me feel worse, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to really do your research and pick up somebody who really seems to know what they're doing and has an interest in you. Because if they're not interested in you and what you're going through, then chances are that's not going to be a long-term thing. However, it doesn't have to be you being in the gym twice a week. You can go in. What I do for my women, it's not about me, but what I do for them is, if I know that they're never going to come across the threshold again because they hate it so much, I know it, they know it, we're fine. What I do is I get them doing basic movement patterns. Like, we all need to have a good squat pattern, a good deadlift pattern. I'll talk about what those are just very briefly, but it's for hip strength predominantly, lower back, glutes. So you want to work your larger muscle groups because they're the ones that are going to pay off. And you do your mobility and your core strength stuff. And what I do is I will walk them through the basics of the fundamental movement patterns that they need, and a push and a pull movement and all of that. And then we take little videos of each just for a couple of reps. They take it home with them. We already know, we figured out what weight works for them at the moment. They take it away for however long they want, 3, 4, 6, 8 weeks, come back in, upgrade it. No, okay, right, we've mastered that weight. Now we need to go up a little bit, or we need to increase our reps, or whatever it is. And it really is, I mean, that's very simplified, but it can be that simple.
And I think sometimes people, Sarah, and I'm sure in your experience, people who aren't used to doing this, everybody wants something that feels accessible to them. Nobody wants to feel, as I said at the top of the chat, I have to get off the couch and turn into Terminator 4 here. Or lifting weights is all about going to the gym and having a stroke, by
ideally not.
Exactly. Hopefully not. By grabbing,
not on my watch.
Exactly, the heaviest weights on the planet and going to town. It's all about a kind of a gradual process with good information.
Yeah, and what I do is I keep reminding the person, motivation is always fleeting. Even for me,
of course,
for everyone. I think sometimes people think personal trainers are always motivated. I mean, maybe I don't know. I don't
think anyone is there. I don't think anything, whatever they're doing, is always motivated.
Yeah. So like that, I keep coming back to the whys. Why am I doing this? I know the physical benefits long term. I'm in it for the long term. I always talk about the physical pension. What you do now, you draw from later in life. And it is that simple. So if the bare minimum that anyone needs to do, the very bare minimum for resistance training to be effective is twice a week. So if you can't take 30 minutes out of your life twice a week to do it, I think we need to be questioning, where are your priorities?
Exactly. Invest in yourself. And of course, women, as we know, I think it's fair to say this, are the great caregivers of society. You know what I mean? You know, and that's wonderful, and it's a really nice trait, if you like, of the female makeup. But if we don't look after ourselves, we cannot look after anybody else.
No.
It's as simple
And
as
also, I find, I don't know if you found this as well, but one of the things that it may not be obvious about being a benefit, but it actually really helps your self-confidence, inner confidence.
Oh,
I'm not
100%.
talking about, so it's an ability to handle yourself. It comes from knowing that you are stronger and more powerful than you were when you started. And it's
Absolutely.
a great thing to be able to take home.
Confidence builder. It
Absolutely.
really is.
Yeah. And that's not always obvious to people at all in the start. What it also does is, and particularly if you're desk-based, it takes away a lot of those aches and pains that you get. And equally, when we come on to the nutrition part, eating enough protein per day, it's perfect fuel for the brain. It stops you suddenly zoning out at that same time every day. You find you can hold your concentration levels for an awful lot longer. So there's an awful lot more to it. Like, ideally, ditch all of the aesthetic stuff out the window.
Agree.
You know, if you can. I mean, society doesn't really work like that, but as much as possible, be stubborn about that and go, no, I'm in this now for the long term. I want to feel good. I want to feel strong. I want to feel confident. I want to get a little bit of power back that I'm losing also. And all those little things. Can I just read a couple of stats for you just on that as well?
Please do.
So, in case women aren't aware, because I find I'm still surprised because I'm so immersed in it, and I'm sure you are as well. You kind of hear this stuff all the time, but if you're not, every year past 40, you drop 1% in muscle size year on year. That can be offset by resistance training.
Okay.
So again, that's a given unless you're doing something about it. So it's the use it or lose it thing. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a 3 to 5% reduction per year, every year after 40 in strength and power.
Wow.
So that becomes more obvious as you hit your kind of mid 50s, 60s as well. And there's an 8 to 10% decrease in your speed and explosiveness. Now, I know someone sitting at home who has never sprinted or been explosive in any way apart from anger.
Yeah, indeed, which I can relate to myself. I'm pretty explosive in that.
Yeah. So why is that important? All of these things are actual day-to-day requirements. And what happens is, as I was saying to you earlier before we hit record, if I see someone in their 40s versus somebody late 50s, early 60s, the things that have gone but are not irreparable are balance. So single leg balance particularly. Why is that important? Because if you trip or fall, how do you steady yourself? Yeah. Instead of putting your two hands out, and if you have weak wrists or osteopenia or osteoporosis, then you're looking at a broken joint usually. Yes. Then, you know, landing single legged and being able to steady yourself is really, really important. Yeah. And then obviously strength has changed as well. Your speed, so even quick reaction times to things has slowed down massively. That is important for day-to-day stuff. Of course. And then if you think about some of the other stats as well, then 75% of hip fractures happen in women. And there's a direct correlation between your squat strength and your hip bone density. Right. So try and think of, okay, instead of I'm just standing here with weights, sitting down onto a stool and back up again, I'm strengthening my hips, and that will, you know, help me down the line as well. Yes. So it's small things like that. Yeah, exactly. They're the things that need to be laser focused in on mentally rather than, oh, I'm still not losing weight or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Because again, we were saying before we hit record here, trends are just such lovely, fabulous things. Certainly trends have very much inspired how people like to look, particularly women, let's be real, over the years. So the trend currently is strong rather than thin, but let's not fool ourselves. That trend will pass eventually, and thin will come back in. And I'm just reiterating everything that you're saying, Sarah. Is so important to look after yourself and to give yourself that benefit, and certainly to work on something that is completely and utterly preventable. Doable. Yeah, and totally doable.
And this, I suppose, is the overarching message, thank God, in this day and age of menopause, between HRT, information around nutrition, information around strength training, information around pelvic health, information around everything. We do not need to fall apart at the seams. Don't buy into that crap. It's absolutely and utterly not necessary. Now, that moves me on to my next point with you, Sarah. So I was a great woman for exercising for many years, but I was also a great woman for eating. So I was fit. I mean, I was fit, but I was like a little fit elephant. All right.
Yeah.
And it's only quite recently that I got the balance right after a very, very long time, I have to say, of that the right balance between nutrition and training, whether running, walking, lifting, or whatever. And I think, again, there's so much old crap out there, and people convince themselves that if they're training like a lunatic, they can eat like a Viking. Do you know?
Yeah. Unfortunately, you can't. I mean, I wish that was the case, but unfortunately, no.
It's not. It's not. So do you want to clear that up for everybody, Sarah?
Yeah. So there's two parts to this that are really important. There are the people that are overeating and find it really difficult to pull back. And if they pull back, they might pull back too much from it and then end up going hell for leather again a few weeks down the line. Yeah. So you're trying to find the middle ground. And we know that the Mediterranean diet is a really good diet for perimenopausal, menopausal women. You're looking for, as much as possible, a whole foods diet and high protein. I'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, great.
But lots of colors, good oils and fats and all of that kind of stuff for fiber, as well as everything else, because we need good gut health is part of what some women go through more than others as well. A lot of gut discomfort and bloating and all that kind of stuff that they may never have had before. Yeah. But there's also the person that is under eating but might not be aware of it. And what I mean by that is, if you are skipping a meal during the day because you're constantly kind of conditioned either by outward forces or yourself over all of the years to maybe skip a meal so you have more room to play with food later on in the day. And there's loads of difficulties with that. First of all, like that, your concentration levels are not where they need to be because your brain is not being fueled throughout the day. So whether you're a working person or not, it doesn't matter. Your brain and your body need to be fed. And skipping, a lot of people have talked to me recently about intermittent fasting. They might not be eating first thing when they get up, but they have a window that they eat within. Look, I'm not going into the ins and outs of what's beneficial and what's not, because everybody has their own kind of 2 cents on that. But I mean, look, anyway, we won't go into that. But you still need to be fueling yourself,
absolutely,
relatively soon after you get up in the morning so that you are ready for the day. So if you make it really simple, if somebody has no idea what they're doing and are so overwhelmed by all the information from loads of different, and lots of stuff that's really incorrect over the years as well. If you make it really simple and go for 25 to 30 grams for breakfast, same again, 30 to 40 or 30 for lunch, and same again in the evening, then you've kind of covered protein, generally covered your basis for the day.
Now, do you need a degree in nutrition, Sarah, to understand what 30 grams of protein?
No, thankfully, no. So if you go like the old adage, it's about a palm-sized serving portion of, is a good idea of where you need to be on your protein on your plate. So if you're skimping on that, that's the one thing that you can absolutely afford to eat well on. Rubbishy carbs are not what we need, especially in the evening. So if you haven't fueled yourself properly through the day and then you're looking for energy later at night, that's generally what you'll go towards. So we're also a little bit spoiled at the moment in terms of, I mean, there's arguments for and against here, but if you were really stuck, there are so many protein yogurts and stuff on the market at the moment that actually say on the front 25 grams or 30 grams. Yes. So if you really don't know what you're doing, okay, well, there's something you can change straight away.
Exactly. And I think one of the great points as well, which I remember only sort of becoming mindful of when somebody told me years ago, protein is the hunger buster as well.
Yes.
Protein fills you up and keeps you full for longer than eating half a pan. So
rather than you diving off the cliff of blood sugar stuff where spiking and then you're off the cliff again. The protein is the thing that keeps your satiety going.
Yeah.
And like that, it's if you're using weights and resistance training and strength training, you have to be eating the required amount, because if you're tearing the muscle fibers as you train them, you're trying to knit them back together stronger afterwards. How do you do that? Rest, recovery, and your nutrition. So again, it's kind of not one but not the other. Everything has, and sleep is another key factor as well.
Another little question from you, based from back in the day, when these kind of urban myths, a bit like menopause, an urban myth, when these urban myths used to abound. And again, this is maybe for people who are training or have started on their training journey. There used to be this idea that women shouldn't lift heavy weights because they'll end up looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Terminator 5. They'll turn into a man, or you look like a bloke. What is, so spoiler alert, that's crap.
Spoiler alert is not true.
But I'm Sinead Blogs here, so let's see what Sarah Alcock has to say about that.
Well, I still get that on the daily.
Yeah.
If I have a new person in, okay, first of all, I want to look toned and I don't want to get bulky.
Yeah.
So just to clarify that, every muscle is toned. If you have a muscle, it has tone.
Yeah.
So what general Joe Public defines as toned is you generally have slightly less body fat, so your muscles are easier to kind of spot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You won't get bulky. It's just not feasible unless you are taking some kind of stimulant to promote that. For women, it's just so hard to achieve. You literally want to be guzzling things to try and get to that point. And even then, it's quite difficult. So there's absolutely no way, really, that you will. So it's not even on the cards, to be honest. So no.
Fantastic. And I think it's a point really worth making strongly, because again, this is one of those old things that used to hang around the ether and is complete and utter balderdash.
Simply not true. But like I said, it's something that I come up against all of the time. So let's just put it to bed. It's not going to happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And say for example, Sarah, I'm in my mid to late 50s to mid 60s, or whatever kind of age group, all the age groups that you would have experience of working with. Is there ever a stage, and again, I know, I kind of know the answer to this, but is there ever a stage where there's nothing can be done? I mean, or is there always a stage where there is something?
No, there's always a stage. And even for, in this instance, we're talking about women. So even for women in getting into their elderly stages, basic mobility stuff is of benefit. So I would sometimes, I don't know if you're aware of those suspension straps, they're like TRX straps or whatever, that you can kind of suspend either over a door, or, if you have those ones, or you can hang from an anchor point. I remember having a woman who was early 90s who used to climb really tall stairs to come into me in a place I was in before, but was just determined. Obviously still mobile, but early 90s.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, our connection dropped there, so we just paused. So we're going to go back to where we were, and Sarah was talking about the wonderful, amazing woman.
Elderly women, So I was saying for there, it can be things like, working from the chair, from seated, that you can do leg extensions and, arm raises and things like that, just to keep mobile in your joints as much as possible. But sometimes having those suspension straps can be really useful, because you can go have a seat behind you, go from sitting to have assisted standing to help you. Because again, we've got to remember, independence wise, if you're not thinking of this now in your 40s or 50s, it's no harm just thinking long term. What is the one reason that we tend to end up in care assisted living as women? It's usually the inability to get from sitting to standing. So that can be up and down off the toilet. Or just generally from sitting to standing. So, just working those basic movements. There's no weight involved when you're older. You don't need it. But unless you've already been using it, then there's nothing stopping you. But if someone has never done anything, you're literally just getting from sitting to standing as much as you can.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. And actually, I must mention I'm in a running club. I'm not running at the moment because I'm a bit injured, but we won't get into that here. Um, but like I run with now, it was always easier for men to train guys who were back in the day married and had kids because women took care of the children and all of that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But I run with some men down in my club. I mean, they're just so inspirational, Sarah. Like they're 78, 79
Yes.
years of age and they still run. Do you know what I
Yes.
mean?
It's
Now they did.
amazing.
I know
And
they did have the benefit of having the time to do that back in the day,
yeah,
obviously.
yeah.
So we do have to mention that. They had more
Yeah.
free
And
time.
do you know what's a wonderful sport as well? And I know in my own club, I see it all the time, tennis.
Yeah.
There's people playing well into their latter years,
And of
and
course, golf is a great game in
golf
that
as well.
regard as
Yeah.
well. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The
So I
great thing
suppose,
about tennis is that
sorry,
you get lateral movements as well as, whereas running is generally
exactly.
one
Yeah.
direction. So
Yeah.
you get side to side movements, a lot of
Yeah.
stops and sudden starts, which is good.
Yeah.
But I mean, like that with the social element as well. I see the
So
same in
important.
my women's groups as well. You know, you've women who would never have gone to classes and not interested at all in interacting maybe in the beginning, but inevitably over
Of course.
time, yeah,
Yeah,
it does
no,
give you camaraderie, and
it does.
it gets you to get used to prioritizing yourself, because women
Exactly.
are like way down the list usually,
Yeah.
and you know, putting it in the diary so that you are doing it for yourself a minimum of twice a week is a necessity as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. And when you have that little bit of a community with the people,
Yeah,
like in your groups, the women who work out together, or in my running club and stuff like
yeah,
that, you kind of feel obliged, even though no one's putting you under pressure,
yeah, you
to
do,
let
to
the
turn
rest
up.
of the gang
Yeah,
down by not bothering your arse to show up. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
same.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have to be there.
exactly. It creates that little extra good little feeling of
Yeah,
obligation. If the rest of the women are going to show up on a Wednesday night or whatever night and it's raining,
yeah,
and they're going to get into their cars and make the effort, well then I have to as well, like, you know what I mean?
exactly. And all of those little things help. And you'd be surprised, you may not be interested in that to begin with, but when you get into that groove, it takes time. You
Yeah,
know, it takes time to bed down a habit. It
yeah,
can be anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. You don't always have to love it.
yeah,
You know, I
yeah,
have quite a few people that, you know, have stuck it out. I know they're not in love with it. They know they're not in love with it,
yeah, yeah,
but they understand the benefit. Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. And speaking from my own experience, just in terms of, and again, running, trying to find something that you actually enjoy. So
enjoy.
it
It's
becomes a
crucial.
little less of a chore. And again,
Yeah,
I'm not a sport Billy at all. I wasn't sporty in school. I am not, gifted sport wise, but I wanted to do some running. And just mirroring what you're saying, Sarah, I joined a running club and I didn't even think about the social aspect. I thought this will put manners on me. I have to go
yeah,
there on a Tuesday and Thursday. And rather than falling off the side of a cliff for months on end, forgetting about it, and then, which was typical Sinead stuff.
yeah, or
Then,
years in some
yeah,
cases. Yeah,
exactly. Jumping into it like a lunatic. I thought I need to have some consistency. So my whole motivation for going there was to put manners on me. But then what happened, unbeknownst to myself, and something I wasn't expecting or hadn't joined for, I developed got all these wonderful friends, this wonderful
yeah,
community that now I wonder, if I'd never joined, what the hell would I be doing? Forget about running. In
yeah,
terms of my social, my network, and my pals. So it would be
exactly.
great in that regard.
Yeah, and they say that about longevity as well. When you're doing something like that, tennis, golf, whatever that involves playing with somebody else,
Yeah.
it definitely keeps you, well, the benefits of it brain wise as well for being around the other people and having a social
Yeah.
circle are massively, massively important.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. So, Sarah, we were saying again pre our chat, for people who are a little bit lost on the protein front, and we
yeah,
know how important protein is, you have some resources on your site, don't you? Do you want to
yeah.
give a shout
So
out for that?
yeah, it's just if anybody's interested, it's a monthly recipe pack. It's a high protein recipe pack. So it has recipes for an entire month. And the idea of it is, I say this to all my clients as well, if they've completely lost their way, it's not that you look at this and go, right, throw everything out now
Yeah,
and
yeah,
buy only what's in this. No. What I would suggest is take maybe 3 or 4 recipes that you like from it. Look at the bottom of each recipe. It has the macros written there. So the fats, carbs, and protein. it's the protein one, even if you ignore the other two, that you want to just compare with what you're eating now.
Yeah.
And say, okay, I suddenly realize, okay, first of all, my breakfast is nowhere near where it needs to be. And, you know, small things like seeds, adding seeds onto full fat Greek yogurt, which is higher in protein than the zero fat stuff and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, all those small little steps help as well. But yeah, you can more than happy to download that for free, and it might just give you ideas for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, it's a Mediterranean style kind of whole foods predominantly diet as well. So
great, because I think one of the other issues as well around food is that people might be eating way over, you know, what they should be eating calorie wise, and they think they're eating loads of food, but the nutritional value like you could be eating 3,000 calories a day and there might be only 500 calories that have any sense of nutritional value in them because of all the crap that we're bombarded with these days and all that stuff.
So try and keep it simple as much as you can. You know, look for your palm size piece of protein, particularly for lunch and dinner, and a small amount of carbs and a lot of veg and color on your plate as much as you possibly can. And you know, and we're coming into soup and stew season, so it's ideal for throwing in for throwing in things like your lentils and stuff into everything, you know, or lentil dal is amazing if you're into that. And look, if you are, you are. If you're not, you're not. But it's an amazing source of protein as well. Sinead, there's just one thing I wanted to add, which is really important. It's just regarding bone density. Again, if the women aren't aware, you are going to be losing it in perimenopause unless you are loading the bones. It's the only way, really. Now, there is another level you can do as well of, you know, like hopping and jumping and stuff that will also have slightly the same effect, but you're not going to be doing that, you know, all day long either. So just to give an example that might resonate with some of the women listening to this, I've had quite a few women in this year and last year that have osteopenia, which, if you're not aware, if you get a DEXA scan, which in an ideal world in my life, you know, once you hit 35, 40, you get a DEXA scan, you get it again in 5 years' time, and you know exactly where you are, both with your muscle mass and your bone density, so that you can track and have control over what's happening with your body. Otherwise, we're walking around kind of sleepwalking into menopause. Blind what's happening. Totally sleepwalking into it, not knowing where we are. But I've had quite a few clients now over the last couple of years, and on the DEXA scan score, you'll get a normal range, the osteopenia range, and then into osteoporosis. And all is not lost either if you're in the osteoporosis zone. So don't think that that's it. I can't ever come out of that now either. But getting someone who's really good that will take you through progressive overloads safely and carefully. 4 of those women have gone back that I've been training for the last kind of year and a half, went back for their 6-month DEXA scan. And those that were kind of towards the kind of middle to bottom of the osteopenia zone in the range have come back up into normal range.
That's incredible.
Just borderline, but that's a massive win. And that was just with the twice a week resistance training. Nothing else. Maybe a bit of light walking in between, but that's doing the bare minimum and proving that it is effective. So all is not lost. And equally, if you have osteoarthritis as well as osteoporosis, equally, it's very beneficial for that as well. So don't think if, you know, you've been given that diagnosis, you feel like, oh, look, I just can't do anything now. No, the opposite is true. So research has proven that it is effective, and it is now safe if you do it in a certain way. So just in case anybody's feeling, oh, well, that's great for everybody else, but I can't do it, because then, just remember that it is still very doable for you. So
that's amazing, Sarah. That's absolutely amazing. And do you know what, before we finish up this evening, 2 things. Number one, is there anything anything else that you'd like to add? And number 2, will you share your website address with everybody as well?
Yeah, sure. No, the only other thing I'd like to add is, again, like, it can get overcomplicated. And if you're anything like me, the more information you see out there, the more totally overwhelmed and confused you get. So again, the bare minimum is if you could combine walking and getting your steps up to whatever is doable for you in the beginning, forget even about a number. Just try and increase it on what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah.
You could add a weighted vest, for example. They exist, and that would be an amazing way of loading your bones without doing any exercise in terms of squatting or whatever. However, if you do want to improve your joints, etc., you really need to do the certain movements. So it could be sitting on a chair to standing, holding a weight, or again with a weighted vest, for example, walking up and down a stairs, holding a weight. Amazing. Yeah. It gets the heart rate up and you're also loading your bones. Single leg step up. So at the end of your stairs on one step up, step down. Great for your calves and your foot strength and all of that. Brilliant. As well. And then load it with weights as well, and just keep it as simple as you can. And then already, like if you've gone from doing very little, you're winning.
Doing great.
You've got to massively like kind of explode the wins in your head and go, no, look, I'm doing more than I was before. Exactly. That's great. Yeah, exactly. That's it. My website is primefitbysarah.com. So you're more than happy to go on there and just download that. And hopefully that will help just kind of refocus on where you need to be nutrition wise.
Exactly. And I think it's probably appropriate that we finish up by saying, you know, just everyone listening who maybe doesn't do anything, even walk or whatever. And again, this is a no judgment zone. Yeah. Think about where you want to be when you're older. Think about getting off the loo yourself, getting off the couch yourself, getting out of the bed yourself. You know, I mean, that's how basic, but how serious this is in terms of your own quality of life. None of us relish the thought of anyone. We're all independent people. No one likes the thought of anybody doing stuff for them or anything being dependent. And think about how you want to minimize the likelihood of that. And as Sarah was saying, we don't have to get the Jane Fonda outfit and head to the gym. Well, we look like a right
much as I love it.
We look like a right Egypt in the Jane Fonda. It was first thing that came into my head, and head to the gym with all the muscle men and the stunning, beautiful people, as Sarah was just saying, up and down the stairs for a start, walk around the block for a start, step ups on your bottom stair for a start. You know, start somewhere, but please start.
And you absolutely can. You absolutely can.
You absolutely can. No, that's fantastic, Sarah. That was hugely helpful. I hope everybody found that informative, and I know they won't have found it scarily overwhelming, because obviously you have a lovely approach and you don't have a crazy off the scale mad approach that scares people to death. So that's brilliant. So we're going to leave it at that this evening. Thank you again, Sarah, for your time. And I will see you next time when I will be speaking. I think I'm speaking to Katie Ridge the next time, but I have to check my schedule. Menno brain. There you go. What can you do? All right. Okay, guys. Thanks very much. See you again soon. Bye.